What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the eSports Narrative. This is episode 14, and today we're talking with Duran Parsi. Duran, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
So, Duran, you are the CEO of the Collegiate Star League, correct?
Yep, that's right.
And as I was doing some research, I came across your Twitter, and I was looking at it. You do karate, is that correct?
Taekwondo.
Taekwondo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. How long have you been doing that?
Pretty much since I was a kid.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I was
many years.
Go ahead.
Many years as a kid, and then as an adult for the past 7 years.
Nice. That probably translates a lot of skills to real life. I know I had a friend growing up that did karate actually, but a lot of translatable skills to life.
Yeah, I like it.
So I always like to ask my guests to give a little introduction about themselves. So tell a little bit about yourself and how you got into esports, and then we'd like to just hear a little bit about how you started the Collegiate Star League. I think that would be interesting for the guests to hear.
So I guess for myself, I just started when StarCraft 1 came out in 1998, and I played. And I used to play competitively, like competed in WCGs and so on. So I was basically, before esports was, called esports even, like I was sort of involved with a lot of the community, and as I played competitively for quite a while. And then when I was in high school, I got my grades were pretty bad, so I decided to stop playing StarCraft in my senior year to focus on my grades. And then when I started playing again, I realized that a lot of my teammates had gotten a lot better. And so one of the things I did was try to find out like how I could contribute to the team while I was sort of getting back up to speed in terms of my gameplay. So I started organizing scrimmages and clan wars for my team to get more practice and so on. And then from there, I kind of noticed that there were, besides WCG, there was really no tournaments going on for American players. There were a couple every year for European players, like Zotac Cups and a couple other things, but there was really nothing for American-based players. So I started organizing tournaments for American players, and then I just, kept on doing more type of organizing type things until, the NASL, North American Star League. I co-founded that with Russell, who's no longer involved in esports. And then that was sort of like that, plus being the general manager at Fnatic for a while was, I guess, when esports started being considered esports on like a more public setting. So I guess that's sort of how I got started. And then in terms of CSL, when I was in college, again, partially because I had taken like a year and a half off from playing StarCraft, and my skill, I wasn't able to compete with like the top players anymore. But obviously I was still like a competitive person. I like playing competitively. And actually my roommate's friend when I was in college told me about a tournament called Winter Games Fest that is hosted at UC San Diego every year. And he told me that they have a StarCraft tournament, and I should start, and I should play in it. So, I kind of, being a competitive player, I thought I would go there and win super easily, since it was just this random college tournament. But I actually discovered there were a lot of Korean kids at my school who were pretty good. And so after the tournament, I kind of, through the weekend, I started talking to a lot of the people. and after the tournament, I kind of suggested to them that, why don't we put together a team of players from UCSD and challenge, some of the other UC schools. So then I just posted on Team Liquid and I asked, are there anyone at, other UC schools want to form a team and play in the league together? So we did that. And then,
what year was that?
That was 2009.
Okay.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I'm very old.
For esports, that's a while.
In case you didn't know, yeah. 8 years in esports is forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how it started, I guess. Yeah.
Nice. Now, what if you had to define esports to somebody? What would you say is esports, or what does esports mean to you?
I mean, I would just say it's competitive gaming / gaming culture. I think, there's, I don't know, some people consider esports and gaming different, or some might consider them the same. I personally just think they're sort of an extension of each other. And they're all sort of like part of gaming culture. So, I mean, that's kind of what I would, at a very basic level, it's competitive gaming, but sort of on a more broader level, I think it's sort of representative of gaming as a whole.
Do you find that that's a term that is common knowledge, or do you find that when you say esports, people kind of look at you sideways and be like, what is that?
Honestly, I think it's pretty much, I mean, unless you're super old, I think it's pretty common knowledge at this point. I mean, even my grandma knows about it. I mean, obviously, I think she knows about it partially because of me, but also, like, I think a lot of people are starting to just sort of, like, be aware of it because it's mentioned in the news so often as sort of this, like, thing. So I think a lot of people at this point know what it is, but they might not really understand it, if that makes any sense. I think it's, like, this, like, weird novelty to mainstream culture. And obviously to people that are into gaming, for example, it's like now totally normal.
Right. Now, on the show, we do kind of a narrative. We tell somewhat of a narrative of the ups and downs, or the highs and lows, the success and failure, so to speak, of the guests. So share with us what's been one of the worst moments for you so far in esports.
One of the worst. One of them I can't say, but the other one, the second worst, I can tell you the second worst. The second worst was, this is also like funny in retrospect, but not at the time. So for our season 5 CSL season 5 finals, which was in 2012, it was our first time doing, like, that was our first year ever doing live events. And that was also like the first year that I was sort of doing CSL full time. Like, I used my grad school loans to fund CSL. And that was like the year where I kind of decided I'm going to like really try to make this happen for myself, like on my own. And so it was our first like live finals, and we had like a pretty big sponsor lined up. And my uncle's like a director and producer, so I was gonna hire him to like do the production for the event. And we had a fairly big sponsor lined up. And, one of the things they were saying was, they were looking to use this to sort of promote a new product that they were launching and everything. And then 2 weeks before the event, I got an email from them saying that, like, their product launch was delayed by 3 months. And so it, like, no longer made sense for them to sponsor the event because they wouldn't be able to, like, use it the way that they were expecting. And so they were like, sorry, no money. The deal's off. And obviously at the time I was like 23, definitely had not been to law school yet, so I didn't really know anything. So basically that was like almost the entire budget for the event that I like lost. So I had to tell my uncle, like, sorry, we don't have money anymore and I can't pay you. I mean, and so because the event was in Florida, like if it had been local in California, it wouldn't have been a huge problem. But we couldn't get all of the gear and everything out. So his involvement was canceled. And then obviously in terms of flying out all of the players, I had to, put whatever money I had into that. So we pretty much lost all of our production budget. So we kind of had to shoestring together some stuff. And then we pretty much had every production problem possible, at the event. Like the funniest thing that happened was, it was the middle of like the semifinals in our 1v1 tournament for StarCraft 2. And it was this like insanely epic game. It was like a TVZ back in Wings of Liberty when Broodlord Fester was like the most broken build order time. And, it was this like 55-minute game. And, it was like Turtle Terran versus, this crazy Broodlord Infestor composition. And it was actually getting to like a pretty exciting part in the game. And then our streaming computer just died. Wow. In the middle of it. But luckily I was observing the game, on like a really shitty Dell laptop. And so what we ended up doing was we restarted the streaming computer, and then we got like the webcam because we didn't have like real cameras. So I basically like picked up the webcam and then pointed it at my laptop screen. And then I had like Day 9 because Day 9 was casting. And so we had like Day 9 like huddling over my shoulder, like casting from me like observing on my Dell laptop while like someone was holding a webcam at it. So it was like the most janky thing known to man. So it's like funny thinking about it now, but like at the time it was obviously the most stressful experience ever.
Yeah, I can imagine the
heat
of the moment.
That was that.
What did you learn from that experience?
I mean, one of the things in particular, well, I learned a couple things. One was always check on equipment prior to the event. So we ended up like getting this camera set up, but we realized when we got there that the computer that we had like wasn't compatible, or rather like the capture card we bought wasn't compatible with the motherboard of the computer we had. So even though we had cameras at the event, we had to use a webcam because the cameras weren't compatible with the computer. So that was obviously one thing on the technical side. And then the other thing was, be more careful making deals and negotiating with sponsors. Because we pretty much lost 75 to 90% of the event budget by the sponsor backing out at the last minute. So I may possibly have done things differently today, but that was definitely a lesson for sure.
So going the opposite direction, what's been your biggest accomplishment so far?
I think it's hard to pick one, but I think as like a general matter, one of the things that I'm most proud of, and it's not even really one specific instance, but when, for example, after the finals this year, which were in Toronto, some of the players after the event came up to me and, they said like, thanks for hosting CSL. And, I met my best player, or I met my best friend, like from the CSL team, and like, it was because of like playing in CSL that I met like a group of really good friends. So I think that plus the fact that I'm now able to like offer employment to people in the esports industry, so that, you know, people who are wanting to sort of have a actual career in esports, like I'm able to offer that to people. Because I know for many people, obviously myself included, that's like a dream, right? How do I play video games for a living and make a living? So now, you know, after many years, like that's kind of a reality. So I think that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of, is just that the sort of impact that things that I do have on people. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think esports is so exciting right now, with everything going on with collegiate, with amateur esports, with professional? Why do you think esports is so exciting right now?
Partially because it's a new thing. I think that there's this sort of drive to, I mean, there's always this drive to like find out what's new and capitalize on it. I mean, this is the case in just about everything. You know, why was like the automobile exciting? You know, it was like a faster way to drive than using a horse, you know?
Right.
So it's like, but, and then like once that new thing comes, you know, there's like a race to be like the first at X thing, or the best at X thing. And I think that's kind of where esports is right now. It's just like everyone sort of is latching on to it. And everyone right now is sort of like, there's this mad dash, to like figure it out. Right. And so on. So I think that's probably a big reason why esports is so exciting right now. I mean, I think the other part of it is just, you know, a lot of people are really into gaming, and, you know, now, especially in the United States, I mean, in like Korea and Japan, it's been different, but in the US, you know, gaming was obviously stigmatized for a long time, and now it's much less so. So people, I think, are more comfortable sort of being open and public about like their interest in gaming. And I think it's not that it's necessarily more exciting now than it was before, but just that there's like a vehicle for people to express their excitement, where before, like, they didn't have that as much.
With the gold rush of esports and gaming, how do we capitalize on the excitement of esports?
What do you mean by that?
So if you're CSL, or if you're an esports organization, or even if you're a player, like, what would be your advice for someone wanting to capitalize on all of this excitement going on and, you know, make a career out of esports?
Well, I mean, definitely for someone who's looking to make a career in esports, I think understanding the landscape is important. And by that I mean, while there is money in esports now, you know, a lot of the like media reports you see, like, oh, esports is like a $1 billion industry or whatever. A lot of that is very misleading, and it doesn't really paint an accurate picture of what esports industry is. So I think having the understanding that while it's like a big thing now, it's still small, and to sort of treat it as such still. I think that is one thing. And so to approach it, like figuring out what it is that you're good at or passionate about, and then trying to find a way to make that fit within esports. So for example, I really like esports and I'm super good at cooking. Well, you know, maybe you try to get a job with a team house being a cook or something. You know, maybe that works. So I think that's probably the most important thing, is just figuring out like what it is that you're good at and passionate about, and then fitting that within esports. Because there's like so many opportunities to get involved, that are outside of like being a player or just like being a social media manager or something. There's like so much more need for careers and jobs within esports. But the thing is, like, many of them may pay very little or nothing right now, but it's like getting there early and getting there first. Like the first, for example, esports historian, or like the first, sports psychologist to get involved in an esports team, like the first guy who did that probably wasn't really making money. It was like, I'm just a super big fan of CLG and I want to help. But now there's like a market for that, So I think having that type of awareness is important.
Right. It's kind of like the first mover advantage, You being the first mover to a platform or an ecosystem is super important.
Yeah, exactly.
This is part of the show I call the 5-question combo breaker. It's kind of like a lightning round. I call it the button mashing section of the show. What's the best advice someone has ever given you?
Damn. I don't know if this is like a particular piece of advice, but my other co-founder of NASL, my former boss, he made me carry a notebook around at all times, and he made me write a to-do list every single day and be consistent with it. And he had a knack for always finding like the one thing on my to-do list that I didn't do in a particular day, and like randomly coming up and asking me about it. Mm-hmm. I don't know, that's not really advice, but it's just like a thing that helped me, I guess. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's sort of like, it's kind of weird, but that helped me, be like, I mean, it definitely helped with like leadership abilities. And it helped in just like keeping me sort of on task and like aware of my tasks, because he was always like more aware of my tasks maybe than I was. So I think that was just like me seeing that was very helpful.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can probably relate to the boss that kind of, it's almost like hazing, but he picks things that it purposely will get you tilted, but he's trying to actually help you improve, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What do you think the esports industry needs to continue to grow and be successful?
I think one of the biggest things it needs is more professionalism. I think that, gamers, a lot of people who are gamers, I would say, are not really used to working in like a professional environment. So like, waking up at like 8 a.m. to do work, right? Like, it's super hard to like operate in office hours, like, or regular business hours in esports, because like a lot of gamers, for example, like, I stayed up till 5 a.m. watching this tournament and I woke up at 2 p.m. Like, that's very difficult to run like a real business that way. So I think that's like just overall general professionalism of people, and treating esports like a job, and sort of having that sense of accountability and professionalism. I think that's something that is like in small supply in the industry, and like definitely could use a lot more of.
Mm-hmm. What's the best play you've ever seen, or the most memorable moment for you in esports?
I mean, honestly, actually, I would say one of two things. One would be the game that I was referring to at the Florida event. primarily because it was like a crazy ass game and just the whole situation around it was really crazy. But like the Terran was super far behind, and like right as we turned on the webcam and got the stream back up, you just saw like a nuke come kill like 20 broodlords, and the game just like totally switched and went on for like 40 more minutes, and it was very back and forth. Another one was when I was managing Fnatic, one of our players, Rain, played against Boxer at the MLG main stage, and game one was this like 55-minute TVT on Metalopolis. That was probably one of the most exciting games that I've ever seen. So, yeah.
Nice. Share with the listeners something that's been beneficial to you in your career.
One thing that's been beneficial, aside from what I mentioned from, my former boss, I think that was very helpful. That's a good question. I think people at Twitch being very helpful to me over the years. I think that's been really good. People at Twitch, not just for me personally, but just like Twitch has helped CSL out so much over the years. That's been, really meaningful, I think, for me. Just having that relationship for so long.
I talk a lot about habits, but what's been a daily habit for you that's been a big factor for your success so far, or for the success of CSL?
I think writing to-do lists every day, it's actually really helpful. I basically write a to-do list every day, and just knowing myself, like I know I'm never going to do everything on the list. So basically, if I don't do one of the things on the list, I just write it again the next day. So over time, it just like keeps reminding me that I need to do it, because I'll keep seeing it there, and then my goal becomes like, don't see this thing on my to-do list anymore. So it sort of increases my motivation. Because I don't want to keep seeing it. So that's something that I do, like very regularly. That it's very helpful for me, just because there's like so much stuff going on, and that's kind of the other thing in esports. It's definitely like, while on the one hand you want, there should sort of be this like more professionalism and so on, but also on the other hand, esports does not work like traditional businesses, right? Like you can't really run an esports company from 9 to 5. Like, so many things happen after 5 p.m., for example. And in many cases, you need to be around and available for those things. And sort of esports kind of things happen all the time. So like keeping a list and being really vigilant about that it's like almost impossible to be successful without being that way. Because you can quickly lose track of everything.
Yeah. Organization and being diligent, like you said, is so important in everything, but particularly when you're managing teams or you're managing communications and you've got schedules to stick to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll close out the show now with you just giving us your perspective on, what it takes for someone to be successful in esports, and share a little bit of your wisdom on, let's say there's somebody brand new that wants to get into some sort of career in esports. Like if it was your nephew and he came up to you or something like that, and he said, "Hey, what would you do if you were me trying to get into the industry? Whether it's being a caster, an analyst, or a writer, or being in the production team, or playing even. What would be your advice for someone who's just brand new, green, wanting to get into this industry somehow?"
I think what I said earlier, being aware of what your skills are and being aware of what specifically you're passionate about is the most important thing, because a lot of people might be saying to themselves, "Oh yeah, esports is cool. I want to like be involved in esports like as this sort of really general thing."
What would you say if someone said they weren't sure? Like, let's say, they're passionate about video games, but they're not sure what exactly they want to do.
If they're not sure what they want to do,
yeah.
In that case, what I would do is I would just start paying attention to esports. Watch tournaments, go on Reddit, read up on stuff, like just sample things out, and see what it is you might like to do. For example, maybe you want to be involved in a pro team, or maybe that's not for you. Maybe you want to be involved in amateur stuff, or maybe you like indie games. I think if you like video games generally and you're like, okay, I want to do this, but I don't know what this is. I think just like go start attending esports events, go to PAX, go to TwitchCon, like particularly go to those things, because I think most of the big gaming conventions right now have a pretty wide variety. Like esports are now at PAX, where PAX typically was sort of this like big indie games convention. It's obviously gotten a lot more mainstream. There's sort of that grassroots element to it still, but there's also like esports that take place there. So there's a lot of stuff that happens at those types of things. So I think if you're sort of interested in gaming generally, but you don't know what specifically you're interested in, I think that's probably a good way to get you sort of this holistic view of everything. And then from there, you can figure out, maybe narrow it down a little bit. It's probably what I would do. Plus, it's just super fun to go to those events, especially if you go with friends, or even if you don't have friends, you can probably meet a lot of people there. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of, even in my own experience, right? Like I met a lot of my best friends from college, who are from my CSL team, which was formed specifically because I just went to a gaming event at my school, and I met a bunch of people. So I was like, oh, I didn't know that there were people at UCSD that played StarCraft, right? And I met like 40 of them in one day. And 3 or 4 of them I still talk to, 7 years later. So that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the show, Duran. It was really fun. I got a lot of good tips from you and things you said and the perspectives you had. So I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your esports narrative with me and all the listeners.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Awesome. And with that, I just want to remind everyone that if this all goes as planned, this show is just the beginning. Thank you, listeners. I really appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating on iTunes. I would love a 5-star, but if you think I deserve a 1, let me have it and tell me why.